Joining me now is Heather Boushey, former member of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Biden administration. Heather, the Treasury Secretary there is blaming the previous administration. You were in the previous administration. What do you want to say to that?
Well, this is their economy. They inherited one of the best economies that any president has inherited in many, many generations. Low unemployment, expectations were improving about the economy. Things were looking good. And yet we've seen that they have very swiftly reduced confidence in the economy across the board. We've seen a couple of months of consumers saying we don't have a lot of confidence here, and consumers now saying that they expect prices to go up. A mini decade high in people's expectations about how they see long-term prices going. I think this all comes down to a couple of really simple things we've seen out of this administration, which is chaos and mismanagement of the economy. The president has, one day said he's going to do one thing, the next day he's reversed course, done something totally differently, all the while not keeping his focus on what's most important to the American people, which is good jobs and bringing prices down and making sure that we have the kind of economy that can deliver for America's middle class.
So I want to pick up on that chaos because let's take a listen together to Canadian Ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman, earlier today on the relationship between the two countries as Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, comes into office. Here it is.
The new prime minister respects what President Trump's trying to do. He's trying to supercharge the U.S. economy for American people, and that's what he's also trying to do for Canada. So they have a lot in common. I think it'll be important to proceed with that discussion in a professional, measured way.
Do you expect a change in tone from Trump on Canada with this new leadership, or more of the same?
Well, my crystal ball does not extend to what Donald Trump is going to be doing next. But, I think that this has been really quite shocking. The way that the president has had this chaotic set of negotiations, if that's what you want to call them, around trade with our neighbor to the north and also our neighbor to the south. For a long time, we've had these very important trading arrangements. A lot of businesses and consumers have made decisions about those relationships. And the president hasn't just said, I want to change them, but he's done it in a way that is increased uncertainty and has been chaotic. And I think that's the important thing to remember here. Over the 4 years of the Biden administration, we put in place an industrial strategy that actually delivered. We saw the investment in the construction of new manufacturing facilities more than double, when in fact, over the first Trump term, that indicator fell. They did not see investment in the construction of new manufacturing facilities, and that's exactly what the president says he wants to see. I think we need to be asking whether or not this chaotic implementation of the same policies that he tried in the first time around will actually deliver, when we saw that a different approach to growing the economy, one that focuses on investing in America, empowering workers, making sure that we're doing everything across the country, that did actually deliver those economic benefits.
Let's take a look at a new survey. It is from the University of Michigan, which shows consumer sentiment dropped 11% in March in the latest survey, to which you replied, "Yikes," on your social media. What does it tell you about what Americans are feeling right now?
I think a lot of Americans are just feeling scared and uncertain. We have this massive indiscriminate chainsaw being taken to the federal government. I'm receiving calls from friends and family. What is this going to do to my Social Security? What is this going to do to my access to health care? People are very, very nervous about all of that. They don't know what those cuts are going to look like tomorrow, and they don't know what it means. And it seems to be a chainsaw approach, which doesn't seem logical. So DOGE seems tough. And then the president seems to, is acting in this way that's chaotic. If we actually do see the economy, not perform well, it will be because of the way that this administration is going about policy. And we haven't seen something like that in certainly my entire career, where the administration itself causes an economic downturn and says, yeah, we don't really care, which is, of course, what the president said, a weekend ago, that might be the pain Americans need to take. But what Americans want is that economic security. They want to know their Social Security is going to be there. They don't want to be giving massive tax cuts to the rich, and they want to know that they can trust that good jobs are going to be there and there's not going to be this kind of chaos.